Listen, whenever you're moving from a new town, it's important to gather as much information as possible about what it's like living in that city so you don't get hit with unnecessary surprises, especially if you're like me and you hate surprises.
Surprise!
In this video, I've gathered up some of the most common feedback I've heard from people so I can share with you so that you can avoid these surprises. I've included some good, some bad, and some ugly things that people just don't know about before moving here. So if you're new here, my name is Zach Payne, and I'm a local real estate agent here in the Sarasota area. Unfortunately, I don't have any personal surprise stories as I was born in Sarasota and have spent my whole life living here. But that doesn't mean that I haven't heard a horror story or two, or three, or four. Well, you get the point. So at con number one, I have overcrowding. I hear people say this all the time. I knew Sarasota would be busy during peak season, like spring break and a few weeks out of the winter months when the snowbirds come into town, but I did not know that that meant that I wouldn't be able to move around freely at all. During peak season, the beach parking lot fills up at around 9 or 10 a.m. and downtown farmers markets can look a little something like this. Sarasota's secret has been exposed to the country. Now, me personally, I've come accustomed to driving down the back roads and avoiding major roads during the hours of 8 to 10 a.m. and 4 to 7 p.m. At this time, traffic is super heavy on most major roadways, including Clark, Bee Ridge, Fruitville, Tamiami Trail, and I-75. But if you have to be on the road, make sure that you plan accordingly and give yourself enough time. I volunteer at a retirement home in Palmer Ranch, which is in South Sarasota. I have a friend who lives in North Sarasota, and every day he doesn't know if he's going to be early to work or 2 hours late because of any bad accident on the road. So he's left with no choice but to leave much earlier than he needs to. This is that annoying reality that Sarasota is now facing. But I hear a lot of people who say that Sarasota's traffic is nothing compared to insert any major city, really. And that's true. I think a lot of people get used to Sarasota and like to complain. But if any of them had to live in, say, Tampa or Orlando, they definitely would not be complaining about Sarasota's traffic anymore. Now, pro number one would be the different lifestyle options. When people visit Sarasota, they typically spend most of their time on the Keys, Siesta Key in the Village, Lido Key in St. Armand's Circle, or even Anna Maria Island, but they very rarely explore the rest of Sarasota. When they do decide to move here, they are so surprised at all of the types of housing styles, neighborhoods, and lifestyles that there actually are that are available within Sarasota County. If you're a golfer, there's tons of golf course communities and country clubs scattered throughout of Sarasota. If you're into arts and culture, downtown Sarasota has some of the best performing arts in all of Florida. From orchestras to operas, plays and theaters, it's all downtown. Now, if you're into farming, raising cows, horses, or even chickens, well, there's acreage homes just east of I-75 where you can do all of that. But what if you're a beach bum? Well, there's affordable living in areas like Gulf Gate and Central Sarasota that are less than 2 miles from Siesta Key Beach. If you're into hiking, running, or biking, Sarasota has tons of outdoor trails that are free or close to free that you can explore. Now, what if you're a big boater? Well, there's a huge boat scene here in Sarasota with tons of easy access to the bay and Gulf all throughout Sarasota. I don't really think I'm missing anything. Basically, the only thing that you can't do in Sarasota is hike a mountain or shovel snow off your driveway, which I think is a fair trade-off. Now, con number two would be the infrastructure. Sarasota has been playing catch up long before COVID exploded our population, so you can only imagine what it's like now. Traffic was beginning to get bad back in 2019, and since then, Sarasota has done all but build more luxury condos and apartments with no thought to expanding roads or adding new routes to and from town. Once things become bad enough for Sarasota County to actually be forced to do something about it, you're stuck with construction zones for years. I really wish that I was exaggerating when I say years, but unfortunately I'm not. For example, there's new diverging diamonds that are being constructed near me at the intersection of Clark Road and I-75, and it began construction in 2021 with an expected completion date of mid-2023. Well, I'm filming this video in 2024, and now 3 years later, we still don't have an updated completion date. Similar things are happening in downtown Sarasota, with the skyline always changing as new luxury condo complexes are being built, put up, and the roads that lead to those buildings don't get any love until it's absolutely necessary. And then they just get thrown up as some sort of afterthought to stop the metaphorical bleeding for the time being, you know? Okay, going on to pro number two is the cost of living. I know what you're thinking. Sarasota's cost of living is a pro? How can you even say that? I'm disliking this video. Wait, before you do, just give me a second to explain. Compared to where a majority of people I speak to are from, for example, the Northeast, California, or really any large metro cities, the cost of living in Sarasota is still relatively affordable. I use this really cool website called Numbeo to keep up with the cost of living in Sarasota compared to other areas around me, allowing me to compare and contrast all the different types of common costs of living for a quick side-by-side comparison. So let's see how Sarasota holds up to some big name cities. Starting off with Houston, Texas. Housing costs seem to have the biggest discrepancy between Sarasota and Houston, according to Numbeo. Sarasota's rent prices are on average 15% higher than Houston, or about 500% more a month, while the median home price in Houston is around $340,000, while in Sarasota, it's $520,000. Other than housing costs, Sarasota and Houston seem to be pretty on par with each other with the cost of living. But let's be honest, when you're considering a move to a place like Florida, you're typically looking for things like tropical weather, proximity to a beach, and a great lifestyle. Lots of people who are indecisive about Sarasota or move away after living here move to places like Tampa, Naples, or even Charleston and Savannah, where they can still experience the beach life, albeit not as good as Siesta Key or Lido Key, but they can also experience changing of the weather and seasons, which is really something that you don't get here in Sarasota. It's year-round sunshine. So if you are considering moving to Sarasota, but are also cross-shopping other towns and want to see what the cost of living is like, click the link in my description to check out Numbeo. Who knows? Sarasota might be even cheaper than the other towns you're considering. Okay, con number 3 is car insurance. Car insurance in Florida is no joke, and Sarasota is no exception. Again, we can thank the ever-growing number of people moving to Sarasota, as well as the amount of people visiting year-round. The likelihood of getting into an accident in Sarasota is quite high. From the elderly people moving here who, let's be honest, probably shouldn't be driving, to the other tourists who are paying more attention to what's going on around them than the traffic in front of them, and sprinkle in the constant road changes and traffic patterns as well as construction, I mean, you just have the perfect recipe for distracted drivers and accidents. Because of this, the last 3 times my car insurance has been issued, I've seen jumps in my premium. For a rule of thumb, I have State Farm. I drive a 2013 Honda Civic, and I have no accidents on my record. My payment is $130 per month, and it's been going up 10 to 15 bucks each time they have the ability to increase it. This is something that really surprises a lot of people after moving here, especially if you don't come from a bigger city where there isn't as much traffic and accidents just aren't as common. Just something to keep in mind. Oh, and the final pro is no more seasonal depression. Now, I don't want to rub salt into any of your guys' wounds by saying this, but I had to look up what seasonal depression actually meant because I had never even heard of it. But once I figured it out, it made a lot of sense to me. Many of my clients, and I'm sure most of you watching this, are also dreaming of the day when year-round sunshine becomes a reality. The day when you forget what it feels like to have to go outside and to scrape all the ice off of the windshield or throw on 5 or 6 layers just to go out and walk the dog. The day when you can decide you want to go to the beach at 10 a.m. and have your feet in the sand at 11 a.m. Where outdoor sports can even be enjoyed in December and that window you open to allow the breeze through the house never has to close. These are things that I experience every day living in Sarasota, and I'm so grateful for it. I understand how the weather can affect one's mood and mental health, especially if the cold, dark, and cloudy days go on for months and months on end. So even if Sarasota is more expensive than the state or city in which you're coming from, sometimes that price increase is much more worth it than the monetary number that's associated with it. Trust me, there's a lot more good and bad things, or just plain out facts that I guarantee you don't know about living in Sarasota. So if you want to learn more surprising facts about what it's like living here